I'm on live. It has been a little while since we have gone live. And now the fun begins in inviting Erin to join, and hopefully that is going to go smoothly. Oh, beautiful sunny spring day today. And I managed to remember to put my phone on focus, so hopefully I won't get any random calls. But today we are going to talk about ceremonies. One of my favorite things. Particularly, we're going to talk about, here she is! We are going to talk specifically about closing ceremonies, but kind of framed in ceremonies in general. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. It worked without too much of a hitch. There's always that awkward beginning where I'm like, I'm on, everyone's watching, but I'm doing all these awkward things. We made it. We did it. We haven't done this for a while.
I know, it's been ages.
It has. I've missed it. We've just been living life, doing the thing, and now the sun is out and we are back.
We're back, baby.
So back. And talking about our fun things. I think it's just when we get that ping of inspiration where we're like, cool, I want to talk about that. Here we go. We're talking about that.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about ceremonies. Where to begin? Yes, Erin has beautiful new glasses. I love them so much. Don't they look so pretty? Okay, so ceremonies. Ceremonies are different to circles. Oh, thanks, Sophie. Yes, indeed, it was my birthday. I feel like it's like birthday week, even though it was like on Monday. Thanks, Sophie. So ceremonies are a bit different to circles in the way that with ceremonies, we are focusing and centering one person, as opposed to a circle where everybody is equal and there's no kind of hierarchy, and there's not that in a ceremony there's hierarchy, but it's a different focus. We're really centering one person and their experience. So in a ceremony, yes.
Sorry, I was just going to say, because we do facilitate group ceremonies too. So yes. Like either centering one person or one particular very strong like thread or theme.
Yeah.
And and so the difference, I guess, as well, is that it's a lot more structured and guided.
Yes.
Than a circle, I think. Yeah.
Yes. And most people would, I think group ceremonies are like a whole other advanced thing, holding like a group ceremony. And so, yes, in that case, that would be probably more similar to a circle, but with a very specific focus. And then a ceremony centering around one person would be around their experience, and your experience as a participant wouldn't be something that was discussed or brought up unless there was like a very specific question. So for example, if we're talking about, so when it comes to ceremonies can be really, really individualized. Like really we can honor and ceremony over anything that arises that where there's a desire, right? But the most, I suppose, when we think about modern culture, we celebrate and we ceremony over and ritualize things like birthdays and baptisms and confirmations and things, and weddings and things like that. And so when we talk about a little bit more of what's coming into the mainstream now, we're starting to see this reclamation of rites of passage. So what we're seeing is our traditional rites of passage, like menarche and pregnancy, and to some degree, and I'd like to see it more, but menopause, and of course like seeing ritualizing and ceremonying around death in a different way than what we have in the modern world previously. And so, for example, blessings have become a little bit more popularized. So they're kind of an easier way, an easier segue in to discuss kind of ceremonies. And so often the way that we would see a blessing would be one woman's experience who is pregnant, potentially has had a baby. It could be a postpartum ceremony. and people are celebrating and honoring that experience and that journey. But it's so important to create guidelines and agreements around that ceremony that isn't like every participant's negative birth stories, basically. You know, because that's what can happen. Whereas if you were running like a group ceremony, then everyone's experiences would be heard. But for example, in a blessing, it's really, really important that there's very, very clear agreements and expectations that we're supporting a particular energy and vibration of the ceremony for this particular woman and what she desires or what they desire for themselves in that experience. And this is the key point around ceremonies, is that with a circle, we might create a very specific structure, but with a ceremony, every ceremony is going to be really, really different depending on what the person wants and what their needs are and what their experiences have been and what specifically they're honoring. So that's what I love about ceremony so much, is that we're starting to see a little bit of that, a few different ways of ceremonying. So I'm loving seeing sort of divorce separation ceremonies and you know, just kind of birthday ceremonies that are more around honoring a particular crossing of a threshold. And this is where we can kind of segue into closings, where they can honor so many different things in so many different ways. And this is what I love about ceremony, is that it's like so open-ended and there's infinite possibility and potential, and also there's like quite particular structure around them. Did you have anything to add about that particularly?
No, I think you've introed it very well. So did you want to like, your kind of jam really is the closing and rebirth devotion ceremonies, which like you said, can be completely tailored to the individual. And I actually think it's really important that it is tailored to the individual and that they can honor any number of transitions, events. And so, like you mentioned, one of the most common ones is matrescence, but then there can be like menarche ceremonies, pregnancy loss or early birth ceremonies, separation, divorce, like somebody finishing a medical treatment or completing a surgery, or those like major milestone birthdays can be ceremonialized. And I think it's just such a richer experience, and it just creates this fertile ground for the transformation to be like honored and completed. I think we get really stuck in our modern world around our rites of passages not being acknowledged or treated with the reverence that they deserve, and it kind of just leads to a population of stunted, stuck humans.
That's right. If we don't take that time and like a moment to really honor and acknowledge where we're at, it's that space. It's like, it's just the acknowledgement and the awareness of like, I'm here in this moment. And so like, this is why I love birthdays, because you get and you know, the end of the year as well. I really love those moments, not because they're any extra special than any other day, but it's just that like anchoring of this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity really for me to take a moment and make space to really acknowledge where I'm at, where I've been, where I'm going, what feels different, how does it feel in my body to be in this moment. And so I love those opportunities, and why wouldn't we take them up? Because Jane Hardwick Collins always says, what happens at our rite of passage becomes our rite of passage. And as humans, we've always, through every culture, every generation, had some kind of acknowledgement of a rite of passage, which essentially is just acknowledging the crossing of a threshold and a transformation. So on the other side of a rite of passage is the acknowledgement of a transition or a transformation. So from, you know, boy to man, where they go through these kind of initiations, or did go through initiations, and girls at menarche, where they've gone from not having a period to having a period and what that looks like, or at menopause of having had a period and having been childbearing to not, and what does that look like, and who am I? You know, it's really coming back to like, who am I, and what do I feel, and where do I belong, and what's my purpose? Because ultimately at the core of our humanness, it is, where do I belong and what's my purpose, you know? And so we always are coming back to that community feeling of like, I am who I am based on the bigger whole of this community, and what is my role in that, and as I grow and expand, what does my role look like? Otherwise we just kind of get stuck. And which you said, which is kind of like adults never truly healing and maturing outside of childhood, and all these like inner child wounding that's coming up and rearing its head, and men not really detaching from their mothers, and you know, all this kind of thing, and then women like mothering, and all this kind of interwoven stuff that we haven't given time and space to really witness and acknowledge. And so really ceremonies are an opportunity for acknowledgement and for receiving, because we talk a lot about receiving, and it's really difficult for a lot of people to receive, and particularly when it comes to like birth, for example, pregnancy. The initiation of pregnancy is literally being able to start to receive help, support, food, like whatever, in order to be able to give everything to that child or those children. But if you really struggle to receive, that's going to be so difficult and challenging. And so these opportunities for ceremony is also about embodying the practice of receiving, right?
Yeah, totally. And so, like you said, like we can ceremonialize our like blood rites of passage. So birth, menarche, this is for female bodied people. Birth, menarche, then birthing our own children, and then menopause, and then death, and then we've got all of our cultural rites of passage, which these days, like, it's extremely normalized to celebrate and honor those with just like getting shit-faced, getting drunk and disassociating, and not like, really, ceremony is honoring the sacredness of the human experience and all that entails. And basically we're born, and then we just live this life of consecutive like deaths and rebirths, unbecoming, rebecoming, unlearning, relearning, remembering. And ceremony is really bringing the sacredness and the reverence and the honor back to those big life events that are such fertile ground for transformation and growth. And so it's about like diving right in and doing it generally in a sober fashion, because, you know, as soon as you kind of introduce substances, you're getting like a disconnect. So you want to stay like in your body, and then you want to dive into these and honor these experiences on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level. And it's often that we miss one of the three, and so then or we miss all three, or we miss, you know, two of the three. And so it's like we don't like grab these experiences with both hands and let all of it in, and let all of it kind of like alchemize in our system, so that we do grow and develop and just step more deeply into who we are and who we came here to be and what we came here to serve. And so I think like we're just robbing ourselves.
Yeah. And the consequences are like so dire. And something you said about like the sacredness, you know, every part of our world and our experience is so sacred, right? And I see people talking about this, you know, everything is sacred. Why are we using the word sacred? the thing is, people have forgotten, you know, like we have forgotten. Or maybe we haven't, ourselves certainly haven't forgotten, but when you look at a lot of the cultural rites of passage, they're either focused on alcohol, which you said, or completely capitalized. You know, like it's all about money. It's like how much money is being spent, how much is external, how much are we proving something. You know, weddings are like, the minute you say it's a wedding, it's like they put the prices up. The minute they say it's a funeral, they put the prices up. Like the amount of, you know, and not to say businesses need to make money and all those sorts of things, but ultimately it's about that reconnection, coming back and remembering and just reconnecting. So ceremonies can be as huge and flamboyant or as simple as one desires, you know, like they don't have to be some really big Instagram worthy ceremony in order to be incredibly powerful. And there's something else I was going to say on that. Can't remember, but essentially it's just about looking at what is this opportunity, what is the experience of this person, what are they wanting to really reconnect with within themselves, and how can we create an experience, or how can they create an experience that truly honors that and truly honors them, you know. And this idea that we are all born infinitely worthy and deserving and, you know, desiring of community and purpose, but that's been forgotten as well, of like, oh, everything needs to be kind of externalized. That's what I was going to say. Ceremonies are very much an internal thing. Rites of passage or you know, cultural celebrations have become very much about other people, you know. And people that listen to my trauma informed class, I talked a lot about safety, and that people don't always feel safe. And so these ceremonies, the whole point of them is what's going on the inside. Truly, it's like it doesn't matter what's going on the outside, and we've kind of reversed that in the celebrations that we currently have. And it's about bringing that back and going, how can we create this experience where we do remember on the inside fully and reclaim that sacredness that exists everywhere, in every cell of our body, in every, you know, particle in our existence is sacred. But it's about actually really re-embodying that and reclaiming that, remembering that. So really that's what ceremony is, as you know, aesthetically pleasing or not, as you want to make it. It's about what's going on the inside, and that's why they're so individualized. And this is why it's important to be so intentional about who's attending, what's the energy like, you know, what are the agreements, what is included, and how are we really truly honoring that for you to feel for that person who is for who the ceremony is for, to feel really like they can absorb all of it.
Yeah. And I think as well, you just had me reflect on how like particularly around our blood rites of passage, like physiologically, there are moments in our life where we experience huge hormonal shifts. And like our endocrine system, I've talked about this before, but how our endocrine system is like where these hormones are produced and excreted within our body physiologically, like align with our energy centers. And it's like at these blood rites of passage, we are given these hormonal fluctuations to be used. And so if we don't harness that energy shift and that kind of surge within our bodies, it's going to kind of like wreak havoc elsewhere. So we can either like honor it and use it in a way that's full of integrity and reverence and honor, and we can like wield it in a way that is really going to serve us, or we can kind of like hand that over and just have it run us. And that's often when things go haywire and when shit gets skewed. Like you know, we've talked about like alcohol becoming involved, and it's often that, like, you know, especially like adolescence, or, you know, the whole like midlife crisis thing, we've got these like major, huge hormonal shifts happening within us. And when that energy isn't used in a positive way, it needs to go somewhere, and it needs to have something done with it. And so that's when we, you know, get like the purchasing of the sports car, or the extramarital affair, or the you know, like falling deeper into addiction, or you know, further dissociation. And so like, let's stop that and like use this gift for all of humanity's benefit, actually. Because the more of us that are deeply connected within, the more sovereign we feel, the more in control we feel, the more we can like harness and wield our innate knowing and our innate power, the healthier the world is going to be and become.
Yeah. Or even just like health issues and mental health issues start to rise up. And it's like that energy is like wanting to go somewhere. Yeah, and people are shocked. And I'm like, yeah, and ceremony is so beautiful. And it's interesting. Blessings are becoming more popular, but still, I mean, and not to shame at all, baby showers still have their purpose. But the more I speak to women, and especially older women like aunties and grandmothers and mothers that are attending blessings, every time they're like, I wish I'd had this. I wish I'd had some opportunity to have this. And they're always the ones that are like crying and sharing their wisdom. And this is really that physiological human need of desiring intergenerational community, where we have the younger women being exposed to, you know, pregnancy and wisdom, and then the older women sharing their experiences, but not from a fear-based place, just from like their wisdom. You know, this is just really what we're desiring, and having these opportunities where we can come together. And you know, men's rites of passage and men's circles, same like, we need this intergenerational wisdom to be passed through. And that's really something that we are losing and missing. I mean, we all go to school and we're like stuck with our same age group the whole way through school, and then, you know, we come out, we go to work with the same kind of rough aged people, and we're just missing these opportunities. And so yeah, so blessings is something that I've discussed already around pregnancy and that transition of matrescence. So the matrescence is that it's the in-between, you know, that in-between stage. And we talk about the liminal space, which is also the in-between, the space of transformation, or in-between transformations, like not quite who I was, not quite who I'm going to be, this messy space. And I think that's another key point, is that we've become really so conscious, because shame is just so easy to profit from. Creating shame creates a lot of profit, and so a lot of people are really unable to, or unwilling to, go to those messy vulnerable places, or be witnessed in their vulnerable messy places. And so everything is about these, you know, big image facades, when really true embodied transformation and humanness exists within our vulnerable, messy, primal, wild experiences that make a lot of people a bit afraid. And often that's because as a child, you know, we might have been shamed or squashed or shushed or whatever to have big feelings. And so there is a level of internalized shame around having these experiences. And even just, you know, a few tears can be really unnerving for people. And so this is why curating ceremonies is really about meeting people where they're at, and allowing for a space where they can find that place to be able to go to where they need to go to transform. Because literally it's like you're breaking open, and becoming, it's like, it's literally like snakes outgrowing their skin. It's like, it's too small, it's uncomfortable, you're not happy in this space, yeah, but you're like keeping it here because you don't want to look messy or unhappy or anything, but you're keeping this old skin. And like, as soon as you shed it, it's like, but yeah, you've got to go to messy places. And so to go to the messy places we want to be witnessed. You know, crying is something we desire to be witnessed by people that can hold us fully, can actually witness us in that space and not hijack the space, not judge, not try to fix, not impose their own agendas, not project their own traumas and their own experiences, literally just like hold that space for full vulnerability.
Totally. And it's just really about creating that space for the grief and the gratitude to coexist, right? Because grief is like of all the feeling states, grief is the one that it's it's like the fastest transformer. Like if you go into and fully feel your grief and alchemize it, you're gonna transform faster than diving into any other feeling state. And grief is one that we really like try and avoid. And you mentioned the snakes, and I love that analogy so much because when snakes shed their skin, it's actually a really uncomfortable process for them, and they'll go off their food, they'll get really irritable if you try and like interfere, like touch them, or like you can completely really affect in a negative way that whole experience. And it's exactly the same for us. Like we just need to have that space held for us by, like you just said, someone who is comfortable in witnessing potentially uncomfortable feeling states, who is not going to want to like race in and rush in and rescue, who is not going to want to like overly meddle, who really understands and embodies just how sacred and important and valid every single piece and part of the messy process looks, without trying to like sanitize it, shush it, hush it down, coddle it, you know, just let it be, which we're really not that good at doing in our
not at all. We're not at all. And no wonder snakes are such a symbol of feminine, you know, wisdom and cycles and transformation, because literally it's in the discomfort that we actually grow and expand. And we've been so programmed, because there's so much profit to be made, but from our disconnection, we're just so programmed that like push it down, take a Panadol, like put it away, put it away, put it away. But like, where does it go? It stores in all of our organs, it stores in all of our tissues, it stores in all, you know, and it comes out eventually. And the Buddhists say, you know, the root of all suffering is attachment. And so when we're so attached to like outcomes and, you know, this skin, it's like, this is my identity, even though it doesn't fit, it's not comfortable. It causes so much, and suffering is different from discomfort. So we need to go through that discomfort of disattaching and being like, thank you so much. And then allowing the grief and the gratitude, like you said, to coexist. And I actually did a podcast episode about grief and motherhood, and like grief literally shows up at every threshold of transformation. Grief is always there, because grief is literally the initiator for transformation. There's no grief, there's no transformation. And we've been so programmed that like grief is bad, just push it down, you're so brave and strong if you don't cry. Like, if you want to cry so that it moves out of your body. And as I've been working with people and their bodies and somatic work and kinesiology and all of those things, and you've been working with energy work, like we literally can see it stored in people's bodies. It doesn't go away. And it doesn't leave. It's not healed. It alchemizes and it moves through it, like expands our system. And so being able to hold these environments where we can expand to hold the intensity of grief and equal joy and happiness is kind of where it's at. And so it's those people, those space holders that can hold these spaces without like, I need to project my own thing, I need to jump in, I need to fix it. Like if we jump in and we try and help the snake take its skin off, like they're so negatively impacted. And butterflies, when they are in their cocoon, if you help a butterfly come out of its cocoon, it will die. Like it actually needs that process of real intense discomfort, and it's slow and it's painstaking and it's heart-wrenching, and you watch it and you're like, oh my god, it's like so a lot. But it's in that slowness and that space that actually they can, and they have to do it themselves, you know. It's like that's empowerment. It's like, I did that and we can just watch. Otherwise you create this real dependency of like, I need other people to help me, but actually part of you dies when someone else jumps in and tries to fix you.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially the essence and core of what we talk about when we talk about ceremony. When I teach ceremony, that's the essence and the core. And that's why I ran the trauma-informed space holding class, because that's like the foundation. Erin and I teach returning around all of the cycles and about like somatic work and nervous system, because that's equal foundation. And then on top of that, then we kind of layer more of the aesthetics. Yeah.
And you just talking about when a butterfly is emerging from its cocoon, it's like, if we meddle or try and help it, then shit goes awry. And is that not the modern industrialized birth complex?
Exactly.
Right? So we need to just come back to like trusting women, trusting the process, witnessing them in their messy grief, their messy gratitude. And like you said, you know, grief comes up at every transformation. It is the initiator of transformation. And if we don't let people feel that, then we're robbing them in a huge way of really actual vital, pivotal opportunities and moments for growth, which is what we're here for. And so like, if we keep doing that, we're all just going to keep coming back and just living this cycle of samsara over and over and over and over again, because we just can't hold anything. So
yeah. Or we get that Mack truck, or we get them where it hits us and we're like, we have no choice but to do it. And it's much than it could have been if I just listened the first. Right? But also butterfly has to like go to goo. Right? In the cocoon, literally disintegrate and go to goo, and they go to this like full goo place before they can come out. And we have to go to the same. We have to go to that, allow ourselves to really just go there. Knowing holding it.
And it's grief because a part of us is dying. Like a part of our ego is dying, and we love our ego. We need our ego. We're humans. Like our ego is our human interface. If we didn't have one, we'd just be like souls floating around in no human body, right? That's when you get like fractures and disconnect. So like the ego isn't a bad thing, but the magical part about the ego is that we have ego deaths like over and over and over and over again. And so each time a part of our ego dies, because that iteration of us is done and it's not serving us anymore and we don't need it, and it's potentially like holding us back. With that comes grief. And so like, let's celebrate that grief and be like, yes, like, of course you're in a deep grieving process around this, because that part of you is dying, and that hurts. Like that is a part of this rich, vast, dense as fuck human experience.
And it's when we're so attached to those parts, and our identity is attached to those parts, that we're like, no, I'm not letting you go, I'm not letting you go. And so we just like hold on to all these parts, and we just get more and more and more suffocated and constricted. And if we don't choose to let it go, it actually gets too much, and then something happens. You know, there's always something. And there's lots of like soul contracts that go on where we've kind of just, our soul it's for our highest and our good, these ego deaths and these things that are happening. And so on that note, that's literally where I really just kind of channeled this idea of closings, which truly at its core and essence is to honor and ritualize the parts of us that have died and honor the parts that are being born. And so closing of the bones has existed for a very, very long time. It's a South American ritual. It has a traditional name that I can't pronounce here. I've got it written down. I can't pronounce it. And it's something that is also, or threads of closing of the bones is kind of pan-cultural. In quite a few different cultures, they have their own versions. So in China, they have their own versions. I think in Russia, like in Eastern Europe, they've got their own versions of these kind of very specific to the postpartum period, where it's more about the physiology of a woman's body and spirit and mind and attachment with the baby post-birth. So there's sort of usually ceremonies that are conducted and performed within the sort of 6-week mark after birth. But what I had felt really strongly, it kind of landed like a seed was planted. I was running blessings for a long time and talking about blessings and just like completely addicted and in love, like so in love with ceremony, and was still learning. And I was just really noticing this interesting theme of mums who were kind of past the baby phase, which is interesting, kind of where I'm at now, right now. Not quite at that sort of retirement menopause age, but really feeling lost, just feeling really, really lost. And I didn't really realize it then, what I know now, which is those parts of us that die over and over and over, and creating ceremony to actually honor each of these phases that happens. And it is essentially the closing ceremonies. Sometimes I just want to call them a funeral because really that is what they are. It's like burying and honoring these parts of us, perhaps these ego parts of us, these identity parts of us that have died, and then equally honoring the parts that are being born. And so it's about creating a ceremony that is really being able to hold these two kind of polar things at the same time, that coexist at the same time, which is quite different to a blessing. You could have a birthday blessing, you could have, you can have a mother blessing, but a blessing is much more a ceremony. There is grief that exists, there is, but you're not actually closing and burying away something in the same way. And so that's sort of the difference between what I teach when it comes to blessings versus closings. I like closings because that's essentially what it is. We're closing that part, but I do refer to them as like closing and rebirth. So sometimes I call them a rebirth, but people get a bit confused between rebirth, breath work, or like a breath work rebirth. But it's more a closing and a rebirth. And we are creating a devotion ceremony that is about really honoring what exists in this moment. All that grief, all that death, this death portal that happens, and we just go through it over and over and over. So you would come back to it at different stages of your life, right? And I feel like I'm at that point where I'm like, yes, I think it is time for me to consider having one. You're looking at having one, and you can combine it with other things. You can combine it with a birthday, you can combine it with something else, or just literally just create a ceremony that is on its own, to just be like, I need to really, this is my opportunity to acknowledge this moment. So that is the basis of a closing, or how we discuss closing ceremonies. And they can come in so many different forms. So I definitely don't call it a closing of the bones, because that is not that's not my language to use, and that's not what I'm creating. A closing of the bone ceremony has a very specific structure, and that's the same with a blessing way. So when people talk about a blessing way, That's actually a very, very specific traditional ceremony from Navajo people in North America. It's not something that we create in the Western world like here. That's their sacred ceremony. So we use different language to explain and discuss what we're creating here. And yeah, so it's not a closing of the bones, but it could be used postpartum. But if you were going to perform a closing or, you know, rebirth ceremony in postpartum, it would be more about supporting the physiology and the spiritual nature of what's going on for that particular period. And as you would for any transition that you were honoring. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add on that?
No, just yeah, the reason that you don't use that language is because the Navajo people have specifically said this is not for anyone else. This is our sacred ceremony, and unless you are initiated into our lineage or, you know, given explicit permission, etc., etc., it's not yours to use. And so that's why it's very important that we don't appropriate their sacred ceremonies.
Yeah.
But we don't need to, because we can just like tap in and tune in to what is true for us. We can do research into our own ancestral lineage. Yeah, we can kind of, you know, your framework kind of follows the like cleansing, releasing, shifting, closing, immersion, and then like re-emerging and integration. And once you kind of understand those stages and why they are the stages that they are, there's just so much room for movement within that, and so much room for like beautiful creativity and the opportunity to really like craft something that is really individual and specialized to the person's needs who is being honored in the ceremony or the ritual.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually, because a lot of facilitators start to feel a little bit anxious, like how am I going to do, you know, because ceremony really is so, and circle too, is so fluid. Like you'd never quite know what you're getting into, which is why we talk so much about capacity building and nervous system, and making sure that the facilitator has the capacity to actually hold really unpredictable, fluid experiences. Like you never quite know what's going to happen when you step in. And so you have to be able to have somewhere where you can debrief and be held outside of that space, so that you can be fully present with full empty presence in that space. But when I created, or when I feel like I just like channeled this sort of structure, it was very inspired by an anthropologist who talks a lot about rites of passage. And so it does have a genuinely like structured nature, so that you can adapt flow. So we're like harnessing this tight masculine, healthy masculine container in order to create this beautiful flow on the inside, depending on who that is, who you're honoring. And so it allows the facilitator to feel confident, you know, like these are kind of the stages that we move through. How can we adapt that to suit one? And you know, that can be like for people who are have a really strong religious foundation, it can be really suited to their needs. For people that like early birth ceremonies, I don't think we honor early birth, miscarriage, termination enough or at all really. And so this is a ceremony that whenever someone talks to me about that, it's about closing, because every pregnancy ends in a birth, and every birth is a rite of passage and a transformation, right? So like you're never going to be the same person on the other side, regardless of, you know, the outcome, the way that you birthed or anything like that. And so it's a really beautiful way to honor that experience and this portal that you move through, and this liminal space of like who I was and who I'm becoming. And that's, yes, so the structure is really important, and it's really flexible to be able to be supportive of individual needs. And so I think as well, I don't think that menopause is honored enough. I don't think that the transition from like younger babies, because I feel like the mother phase is really split in two. I've talked about this a few times, and I call it like late summer. And I don't think that that second phase of motherhood is really discussed enough. It's so different. You've like been a hot mess for however long with these tiny babies, like who the hell am I? And then it's like suddenly we're in this sort of preparation phase for harvest, but we're not quite there yet. It's like, oh, who am I again? Like, I'm not quite who I was before I had kids, but I'm not quite who I was when I had like little babies attached to me 24/7. And so being able to honor that is really, really important. And I think separations, you know, there's a lot of separations that go on, and really being able to honor and acknowledge what was and what is now, and having that space to just sit in that, in all of the feelings of like, who am I now? What do I want now? And yeah, so it can include, you know, body wrapping and things somewhat similar to a closing of the bones, sort of, but similarly with a blessing way, like you said, they don't give anybody outside of that particular traditional culture permission to use that, because it is so much more than just what people like to cherry pick. Similarly with the closing of the bones, if you're taught by a traditional South American teacher, she will teach you exactly the process, you know, which includes a whole lot of wrapping and other things. But a closing ceremony is what I talk about, is different, and you can include some wrapping, but it could include, you know, burial or washing, or I do love the burying stuff, but it can include so much. It can just include symbolic, like burying. There's so much symbolism that can be brought in to create this transformative ceremonial space that encompasses the different stages in order to move from you know, preparation, separation, to that integration. And the integration part is really important too. The integration takes a bit of time. So allowing that person to have that space to fully integrate, like, I am here. I choose to be here. And that's the other thing, is like, they choose to be here. I am here. I choose to like go through this process and take off this skin that doesn't serve me anymore. And I choose me to like be here fully owning this. And the permission and the like immense embodied empowerment that comes from like choosing that and then being witnessed in that is like fucking phenomenal. That's all I can say. Like, the words cannot even like describe how fucking phenomenal it is. It's different for every single person, and it's every time blows my mind.
Yeah. It is. It's like, it's the missing piece. It's truly the missing piece. And this is why I think so many humans these days feel kind of like a little bit lost, a little bit adrift, a little bit like not quite sure, like, what's the meaning of all this? Why am I here? Like, what's going on? Where am I headed? And I really feel that, yeah, a really big missing piece in this is not fully harnessing and acknowledging and ritualizing our death and rebirth portals. And just as an example, like matrescence, like when the maiden dies and the mother is born, it's like within that space, it's like with the birth of a physical human, like, or, you know, it happens around the age of 25, like our creative potential kind of is born at the same time. And so it's often twofold for women, that they've just become mothers, and so who they once were, like the maiden is gone, but then they have all this creative energy where they're like, I don't know what to do with all of this, and they have this real sense of urgency, like, I've just got all this energy and I've got all these ideas exploding in my head, and I'm so sleep deprived, and I'm not sure what to go or where to be or how to do it or what I'm supposed to do first. And it can feel very discombobulating and like overpowering for your system. But if you have slightly older women who have traversed this rite of passage and who know what it's all about and who know what it involves physiologically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, then they can gently guide you through that. And by fully like harnessing the energy of this time and using that energy to like kill off those parts of you that no longer serve and ouch, and then come into this new version of you, like that's truly where the gold is. It's like the juiciest, richest soil ever.
It so is. That's it. It's soil, right? It's that like fertilization for the growth. And we don't actually always know what seeds we're planting. It's like, I don't know what the growth's going to look like, but here are my intentions of how I want to feel. And that's the thing, is that opportunity to set intentions. You know, how often do we take a moment to be like, I am setting my intentions for this phase of my life? You know, fuck, that in itself is so powerful. So powerful. And when you were talking about the maiden dies and the mother is born, like, so the maiden always continues to live within us, but if we don't actually truly honor the fact that she's no longer in the driver's seat, there's a resistance and there's a fucking battle that goes on within. And we've got a world of adults who are not fully integrated in their like mature adult phase, and like their inner children are literally constantly battling to take the driver's seat, mostly winning. And so it's really about owning this, of like, this is who I am now. I am deciding this, and that permission and that owning of who one is now, taking full responsibility. Like, man, the power that comes from responsibility, like taking full responsibility, is unprecedented. Like it's what's the word? Like paramount, unparalleled. Yes, that's the word I'm thinking of. And also, just, you said like letting go of those parts that no longer serve, like deciding I'm no longer available for X, Y, and Z that's no longer serving me, and just having that opportunity to say that, and then really fully physically immerse yourself in a ceremony where you're, you know, it's basically a funeral. You're like killing that off. You're literally killing that off, and really experiencing that, because ceremony is such a felt experience. This is why I think we find it hard to like find the words. Like, I don't really know how to explain this, because it's such a felt, when you're in that space, it's such a felt experience. Like, to be buried or to be wrapped or to be symbolically closed, it changes you, because you've set that and you've decided that, and shit changes. Like, everything changes beyond that moment, because you decided that it would. And it's incredible. Like, that is the magic of this work. So yeah, I think we just really wanted to clarify what closings were, why they're important, how they differ from perhaps what we hear about them, and also how they differ from something like a blessing or a circle, and why they're just so fucking valuable and important. And if you are a facilitator and this is, you know, something that calls you, like, they're next level amazing. I often don't post about them, and I think it's just because it's really hard to find the words. It's so hard to find the words to explain exactly what transpires in these spaces, and like, I just can't find the human language to explain. But I do have the video of Brooks. She had it filmed and obviously has given permission for me to share on my Instagram and on my YouTube as well, of her closing, and you can just feel some of that.
Sorry, yeah, the words are tough, man, because like the English language is so masculine and like linear, and ceremony is all like the feminine chaos felt energy. But like, the best way that I can describe it is that, like, once you harness like the physiological hormonal cascades that happen within the human vessel, and you utilize that and tie it in with like super powerful sacred space, calling on allies from other realms and dimensions. I mean, we don't need to get too woo here, because really it's almost like the simpler the better. But it's like what happens in the energetic field is literally like it's like a it's literally like the whole world shifts, right? Or your whole world shifts. And then energetically, because that shift has taken place, it's like other things come in and other things leave that is for your highest good. And it's just it's like you can't explain it until you've lived it. And if you haven't lived it, it's never too late to start. And the ripple effects are just like so vast and so far reaching. It's like our human brains can't even conceptualize it. It's like quantum entanglement, you know, like something happens here and the exact same thing happens like over there on the other side of the world, because there's so much that we don't yet have like the science to back up, but we're slowly getting there. But this is why like ritual and ceremony has existed for millennia, and this is what all of the gurus and like mystics like since forever have been talking about and harnessing, because this stuff is like magic. It's pure magic.
That's it. I'm glad you said that, because one way that I can describe it is it's a soul embodiment. It's like you reclaim all parts of yourself to become fully whole. And I mean, everyone is whole, but sometimes people like allow parts of them, or not consciously, but parts of themselves kind of come out and disassociate and externalize. And, you know, that's kind of the way our culture, they love it that way, because then they profit and they can get in, right, and get the hooks in. But when our soul is like fully embodied, and we're like this whole soul in physical form with all those parts in, we're completely like unfuckable with, like, and our most powerful self. And if everyone is their most powerful self, like the world was just going to be an incredible, amazing place. And I think that's what I witness is like people, it's like their power like drops in again, and they wake up, they come out of it, and they're like, it is like being reborn, because they're like, I haven't felt this before. I haven't felt my full, complete wholeness in my body, and like, holy shit, I have to like learn how to walk again. But also I want to say on that, because when you were talking about, you know, all the dimensions and things, it doesn't actually have to be, and I was talking about it being like a funeral, it doesn't have to be like heavy. I think this is where people maybe get a bit scared of closings, or like, oh, it's going to be like too emotional and too much crying. It actually can be really fucking fun and beautiful, and like dancing, and it is whatever you want it to be, right? Like we honor things however it needs to be, and we just like trust that, and however you desire it to be, to really embody your true soul and power. Like so many words around like reclamation is like reclaiming power, it's embodying one's soul, it's soul retrieving, it's, you know, like it's all of those things that come, and it doesn't have to be witnessed by a lot of people. It can be witnessed by one person or a group of people. You could do it in a group, but it doesn't have to be heavy. It can feel heavy sometimes, but that could just be the thud of like it all landing. It's literally like a landing. That's how I feel. It's like coming back in, but not constricting like the skin. It's like freedom, but landed. Like, oh, it's amazing. And so, yeah, so I don't want people to be like, oh my God, that sounds so heavy and intense. And also heavy and intense is fucking brilliant also sometimes. But it can be so joyful, and there's a mix of laughter and tears and all of the things, because it's pure human experience. And as you, the person in the center, like is fully embodying their soul, everyone around that feels that ripple effect. And, you know, you were talking before about industrial birth institution, you know, the way that we interrupt and interfere birth ripples out for every generation beyond that. And the same happens with ceremony. for healing, and healing truly just means returning to wholeness. And so that's essentially what this is. It's like a ceremony to honor and return to wholeness. And so it is a celebration, but I suppose blessings are a little bit more of an intentional celebration with grief that filters, that weaves through. But closings are really that returning to that intentional returning to wholeness and returning to one's innate truest power. And you and I mean, you're offering and facilitating closings 101 at the moment, which is the best. I haven't had the capacity to be doing that for a little while, and I just would love to see more people be able to do that in a really embodied, ethical, trauma-informed, sacred way. And this is why I teach it. And I like the way that I'm teaching it is something that I just have come up with and evolved with, and it's not, I mean, there's inspiration from various places that I've credited, but it's something that I feel really, really strongly and passionately about based on the work that I've been doing and the things that have come to me. So I would love to teach more people to do it so that more people can be experiencing this in the most incredible, amazing ways. So we are teaching closings on day 3 of Liminal Retreat. For the people that have worked with us before, they're coming just for day 3. But for those phone keeps blocking out, come to the retreat is basically what I'm trying to say. It's going to be freaking awesome, and it's going to be a fully embodied praxis experience where we're going to go through in a really fun way, held way, felt experience with all the incredible nourishing foods to learn about holding space for ceremonies and circles. So fully confident in circles, but also in just like holding space for one-on-ones, for groups, for anyone. Like if you are an existing space holder, it is for you. If you are brand new, brand spanking new, it is also for you, because you can never learn this too many times. And I was going to say as well, just quickly about that, that closing ceremony. So you can experience them more than one time. So we have a version that we offer, our own little version for winter solstice and Yule in our closing, in our closed circle journey. But then you can also experience them multiple times in your life. So you can do them in so many different ways over and over and over. And just every time you learn these things, there's more and more and more layers that you peel away. So if Liminal is calling you, please get in touch, because we can figure out a way to make it work. If this isn't the time, please get on the wait list, or get on the wait list for the online training. And if just what we talk about is something that you resonate with and you want to know more, please come and join Returning, because we have a monthly online circle where we also do transmissions on a different topic that we feel called to. We're going to talk a bit more about nervous system, I think, in more depth. So come and join that. It's only $33 a month. Do you have anything to say about these amazing experiences that people can join?
Yeah, no, just like come to Liminal. It's going to be fab. We've already got, I think we've got a few spaces left, but it's more than half full for the 2 and 3 day, which is super exciting. Returning really is just the foundation. So if you're not sure, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. If you're not sure where to start, but like all this stuff is intriguing for you, then Returning really is the foundation. So that's the monthly membership. You get access to a portal, an online learning portal, which has so many resources. It has like guidebooks, it has video transmissions, it has podcast episodes. We literally cover everything about coming back home to yourself, getting in touch, like learning your body, becoming more embodied, getting back in touch with your intuition, your innate knowing, learning about the cycles that we are living continuously, whether we acknowledge it or not, our inner cycles, our outer cycles, how they all interweave, and how we can like honor and celebrate that and really embody that learning at like a cellular level, because that is truly the foundation to this human experience. And then beyond that, liminal retreat is going to be absolutely amazing, and I'm so excited. And day 3 is going to be awesome, because we're gonna day 3 is all about closing ceremonies.
If you come to liminal, you get access to returning as well. So any space holders that are holding space, but liminal's not quite for them at this moment, like returning is the basic. We really, really need to be doing our own inner work and our own, like, continuing that. Like, it's never done. We're never like, I'm embodied now, I'm done. Like, it's just this ongoing, just more and more and more layers, because as we go through these portals, these death and rebirth portals, it's like, oh, there's another layer, and so returning is that foundation. But liminal in person, there's like nothing else like in person, and the felt experience that we've been talking about, and you will get to experience the closings, and you experience being with other women and who are doing this work as well. And there's nothing else like that, you know, just in terms of that sort of ceremony, but also just in person is the magic. So it's 3 days in November. If it's calling you, just get in touch. Let's have a chat. We'll figure it out. There's not many spaces left, but there are still a couple. So, get in touch. I think that was everything that I wanted to say. Oh, one more thing. I did record a podcast episode specifically on closings. It covers a lot of what we talked about today, but if you do want to just hear a little bit more about closing ceremonies or other things that we've talked about, I do have that podcast episode, The Art of Rewilding podcast, and I have a YouTube channel with all of our other lives that we've and various other transmissions if you want to get a feel of us. And because we love giving away free shit, all the time, we're going to do, because we just get called to talk about things that we really want to get out and be of service, we're going to run a call on energy protection very soon. We haven't picked a date yet, but stay tuned for that. It's something that people have been asking us a lot about, protecting your own energy, which is so important and vital. My trauma-informed space holding class, the replay is still available. You can download it in my from my bio. I think that's everything.
Yeah, Lou, we love you too, woman.
We love you too. The closed circle winter ceremony, so you get it.
Yeah.
All right, does anyone have any questions? I should have asked that, actually, if anyone has any questions. I don't think so. I do have to run to school pickup, but thanks for joining us if you joined us live.
Yes, and Alicia, I can't wait to journey with you again at Liminal. Alicia is doing a Liminal again, which is going to be awesome. I don't think there's any other comments. Nope.
I think that's all. Yeah, see, people are coming back because it was so freaking great. Like, so many are coming back. Because once you come, you realize how amazing it is, and the oxytocin just flows. And it's not just about the learning, it really is that felt experience and just community and being together. Yeah, thanks for joining. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to send me a DM, and we'll see you soon when we feel called again. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Bye. Bye. See ya.